folks, welcome back to Ingonyama Africa. This is Chris once again. Folks, welcome back to Ingonyama Africa. This is Chris from Central Pennsylvania. News breaking out of South Africa today. Sad news for the Zulu nation, where King Goodwill Zwelithini has passed away at the age of 72 over complications from his diabetes. It turns out he also tested positive for COVID-19. King Goodwill Zwelithini, the traditional leader of South Africa's Zulu Nation, a group, the largest ethnic group in South Africa of approximately 13 million Zulus, had been hospitalized frequently over the past month. He is the 8th Zulu king since the creation of the Zulu Nation under Shaka in the 19th century. And he's the longest reigning Zulu monarch in history, serving over 50 years as King of the Zulu. As I mentioned, he had been admitted to the hospital over his diabetes, and those complications apparently are what are led to his passing. The king is a direct descendant of King Cetshwayo. He is the Zulu king who in 1879, when the British illegally invaded Zululand in order to take over the kingdom of the Zulus, his impis thrashed the British Empire at the Battle of Isandlwana, wiping out a column of over 1,500 British and indigenous troops in Zululand. Shortly after that, overzealous impis went and attacked the mission station or the store at Rorke's Drift, and they were held back and defeated in a very triumphant victory for the British, but one that was overshadowed immensely by the huge defeat at Isandlwana. Later, of course, the Brits defeated Cetshwayo and his forces and took over Zululand. But King Goodwill Zwelithini is a direct descendant of King Cetshwayo. Now, throughout his 50-year reign, he was known and respected for his desire to preserve culture, not just Zulu culture, but the focus, of course, was Zulu culture. Often seen as a straight talker, he came under some fire on more than one occasion for his comments. And he also was not afraid to speak out against the African National Congress and its malgovernance of South Africa. He became king at just the age of 20 in 1968. However, there were death threats against him apparently, and so he fled the country and resided in St. Helena for 3 years, something in common with Napoleon, I suppose, but spent 3 years at St. Helena while he was king before he was installed as the Zulu king, which came later. And that was in 1971. He served for 5 decades. He leaves behind 6 wives, and he had 28 children. 28 children, folks. Wow. 26 of whom survive his passing. So who becomes king next? Well, that's not known. It is known that apparently his successor was already named and is a secret that will be revealed to the public soon, but we do not know who that might be. He served as king of the Zulus since the end of apartheid under the 1996 Constitution, which allows for traditional leadership clause. And he's had that position, which is authorized in South Africa's governance, but it's not an official political position, largely a ceremonial position. But of course, he's been king since 1968. He became king on the death of his father, Cyprian Bekuzulu Kasolomon, who passed away in 1968. But as I mentioned, he couldn't serve for 3 years in South Africa. He fled to St. Helena, and in his stead, a regent served during that time. But on the 3rd of December 1971, he was back in South Africa at a ceremony attended by 20,000 people when he was installed as the king. King was also the chairman of the Ingonyama Trust. The Ingonyama Trust is a large entity responsible for nearly a third of the land in KwaZulu Natal. He also performed functions such as the Umhlanga, which is the ceremonial reed dance, and also the Ukweshwama, which is the first fruit ceremony. Additionally, the king traveled extensively throughout his life to promote tourism and trade, and also would hold audiences with Zulu who lived outside of South Africa whenever he traveled abroad. He had a number of honorary degrees, including in 1994, the University of Zululand conferred an honorary doctorate in agriculture on him. He was a chancellor of the American Newport University's South Africa branch. In 1999, Coker College in South Carolina awarded him an honorary doctorate in law. And in 2001, he was inaugurated as chancellor of the M.L. Sultan Technikon in KwaZulu Natal. Now, the Ingonyama Trust, which I talked about, which is a controversial entity created at the end of apartheid by the apartheid government of the National Party, placed 2.8 million hectares, or 29.67% of the land, in KwaZulu Natal under the trust, and the king as the person in charge of the trust. Now that's 28,000 square kilometers or 10,811 square miles. This is controversial because this land is held in trust, and which means that individuals do not own it. And land tenure, of course, is a significant issue in South Africa, particularly now with expropriation without compensation on the table. As I mentioned, he had 6 wives, survived by his wives, 28 children, 12 daughters, 16 sons. 2 of his children did not survive him. They died before he did. That was Prince Buto, who died in September of 2018 from undisclosed causes. And then just recently, in November of 2020, Prince Letutukula was murdered at the age of 50. Now, during most of his reign, his 5 decades, he had an interesting relationship with his cousin, Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who was also a prince in his own right, and founded the Inkatha Freedom Party, which was the ethnically based political party, is the ethnically based political party of the Zulu. Almost all of its members are ethnic Zulu. There are exceptions. But Buthelezi and the king had a difficult relationship for a number of their years. And nonetheless, they did work together. Folks, today, the 12th of March, 2021, the passing of Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini at the age of 72 over complications from diabetes. However, he did test positive for COVID-19, apparently. We don't know who the next king will be, but that should be mentioned very soon and disclosed to the public. Certainly has a large list of candidates to choose from for direct lineage with 16 surviving sons. Who will be the next Zulu king? 13 million Zulus want to know, and I suspect a fair portion of the 58 million South Africans would like to know. Whatever you thought about King Goodwill Zwelithini, he was by and large a well-respected and popular figure throughout South Africa and also abroad. And his passing will be mourned by millions of people in South Africa and around the world.